Hi, it's Winton Churchill with the Barefoot Consultants. Welcome to our Friday Facebook Live. We're happy to have you here and looking forward to some interesting questions today. There's a few changes in the freelance market that are coming that are pretty, I guess the word might be glacial in the sense that they've taken a long time to manifest, but they're going to have a big impact on that. And so happy to take your questions along the way as well, uh, thinking about how to move one step closer in your freelance life. And we'd like to also welcome all those who listen to our broadcast, really, who are most folks listen to this not live, but 95% of the people listen to it afterwards. But we'd like to welcome you here. And we'd like to say that if you have comments or questions, be sure and put them in the chat window. And we answer those and monitor that even after the call is over. So if you have a question that needs to get asked, and we do have a number of folks that are in our various programs, our freelance programs. We have a meeting every Tuesday night, and I notice the questions we get here also turn up there, but this also goes out to our public Facebook page. So some of those folks may or may not be members of our program. But yeah, the three big changes that are coming along, and it's funny as I sort of came up with the title for today and thought about what I would talk about. At that time, there were three, and now there are really five that I've got here. So just as I go through the week and you start reading different things and you think about different things, you see what the big impact. The biggest impact, of course, is people getting vaccinated, and that is if you look at these statistics, and there's a lot of people that have different opinions about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but lots of people are getting the vaccination and lots of the rates are going down if you just look at the numbers. So that's going to mean that people are going back into retail businesses, they're going back into stores, they're going back into restaurants, and they're going out and doing more of the kinds of things that they would typically do. And so, as freelancers, and particularly on this podcast or Freelance Live or a podcast or whatever, we don't like to get into the politics of it. We just like to tell you what the landscape ahead looks like. And no question that just looking at the numbers, the vaccination is causing things to open up. I noted that this week that cruise ships started sailing again. There are just a few cruises around the world, and there's a couple channels that I follow there because I'm, had a cruise scheduled before the lockdown and kind of want to go back and get that cruise experience because that's a lot of fun. I really enjoy that. And so have been kind of watching different bloggers and YouTubers that talk about cruise experience and what's happening. And of course, the cruise industry has been in upheaval since the pandemic started. And it's great to see them out and see all the precautions they're taking and that kind of thing. And it's fabulous. One of the things that has always been, a challenge on cruises, which I love to do, but is this, the threat of some kind of infection or flu or whatever going through the ship. And every couple times a year, we'll see out of the thousands of cruise ship sailings, one or two or three where there's some kind of problem like that. And so that's something that's out there, but never happened to me when I've been cruising, and cruising is a lot of fun. But that is it's just interesting to see how they have adjusted. They have social distancing. One of the big appeals of a cruise is the buffet, and the buffet, they've all worked that out with coverages and things like that, and you can actually sit in the bar areas and have drinks and not have to wear masks, and it's all pretty interesting how that's worked out. And so the vaccination is going to change things, and with vaccination comes travel, and an important part of that travel is the tourism travel. And who doesn't want to get out, after being locked up for over a year? We all want to get out, and we all want to travel, and we all want to get where we're going as soon as possible, to get that sunshine and that warm beach or place in the mountains or highlands or what have you. So, this is just a massive opening of things, and this will create lots of freelance opportunities as companies and organizations and governments everywhere will have to adjust. And in many cases, they don't have the people that know how to help write the procedures for their new opening. They don't have the talent. In some cases, they do have the talent internal to their company, but the person that is that talent is now deployed on that, and they need to backfill that position with what is typically a fairly straightforward job that people with different skills could do, versus the job of writing the new procedures or reconceptualizing the business that only people really close to the business would be. But this is going to the point of triggering this whole idea of more flexibility in staffing. What I see happening is lots of companies that may have been 100% employee. They may have been a small business with 20 people, and they had 20 people that were employees. Well, what we're going to see now is we're probably going to see something more like 10 or 12 people, and then using freelancers to backfill their peak load times, and which is one reason. And the second reason is when they need to bring in special expertise. And I see Bob has jumped on the call, and Jackie from Roatan, good to see you, and hoping diving is returning to normal. I'm sure the travel hasn't quite returned to normal, but as soon as people start getting on airplanes again, that will come back, I imagine, pretty quickly. The next big thing that is happening is it has to do with Microsoft. And a number of years ago, Microsoft bought this company called LinkedIn. And a lot of people would describe it as where resumes go to die. I mean, a lot of us have LinkedIn accounts. We may not keep them up very well. We may not do much with them, but Microsoft, gosh, I think they paid some outrageous amount, something like $26 billion to acquire LinkedIn. And what LinkedIn has done, I mean, there's some bright spots. They have done some good things, but my suspicion is they've come nowhere close to recovering their investment in that. And it has long been rumored that there was an attempt to try to get LinkedIn to have a transaction engine for freelancers. So what we see on Upwork and guru.com and freelancer.com, that is a transaction engine for freelancers. And just as a matter of scale, Upwork, I think, has about 15 million people working in it, both buyers and sellers going back and forth, which is a lot of people. They paid out something on the order of about 2.7 billion with a B dollars last year. Very, very good year, lots of freelancing going on. And 15 million people is a lot. That's a lot of business activity. Well, last I heard, LinkedIn was at about 600 million. So they were many times larger. And, if I were Upwork, I wouldn't be worrying quite yet, because it has taken 2 decades to evolve the Upwork system to the level that it's at now. And as in all things software and application and that kind of thing, and database, it takes a little bit of time or a lot of time to evolve to where you want to be with that. Well, just over the last few weeks, it's been rumored that Microsoft is going to be putting a freelance transaction engine. So you actually will be able to do deals through LinkedIn. And you've kind of been able to do initiate relationships and that kind of thing. But the actual handling of the transaction, where somebody says, I want this, and you say, I can do that, and here's how much I'll charge, and the credit card and all that kind of stuff, that's a lot of technology to get going that doesn't really exist to a degree in LinkedIn today. Now, they do have specialized advertising things and all that kind of stuff, but they don't really handle the freelance transaction. And part of the freelance transaction is the critical part is going to be that recommendation engine. And how does the freelance buyer rate the freelancer, and how does the freelancer rate the freelance buyer? So this is all stuff that has to be worked through. But Microsoft coming into the freelance business will make this much more real for many, many, many more people, because a lot of us over the last year, still employed, working from home, are sitting there, going to Zoom meetings, pushing documents back and forth, maybe learning how to use a project management system that your company's using just to kind of keep everybody that's scattered around on the same page. But they're sitting there saying, I am employed by this company and I'm glad I'm employed, but I could probably do some freelancing here. And a lot of people that come through our programs say, I can do a little bit of freelancing, or I can do a lot of freelancing. In fact, if I'm not crazy about my job, I might try to figure out how to move to a career over the next 6 months or a year where I'm doing all freelancing work. And one of the big advantages of that, and we saw this certainly during the pandemic, if you're employed and your employer decides that they no longer need you or your department or your division, they just say, we sold that off, we closed it down, goodbye, adios. The great thing about working on freelancing, the way that we teach it, is that we recommend that you have 3 to 6 clients that you're doing repeat work with on a regular basis. And the great thing about that is that if one of your clients, you lose them for any reason, usually they're going through the same thing. Maybe the person you were dealing with as a buyer of your services moves on to another company. Maybe that company gets sold to a different company. There's all kinds of reasons that people move around in the freelancing world. But the idea here is, how, if you've got 3 to 6 clients, first thing is you only lose a percentage of your revenue from that client. So in an employment situation, if you lose your job, you lose it all, and then you're on the street kind of looking for a new job. And the other part of that is, you don't have, that's like, for those of you that scuba, and I know that Bob instructs on scuba and is an avid scuba diver. But when you're going through that training, there's a part of the training where they kind of rip your mask off and turn your air off and make sure you know how to get your mouthpiece back in your mouth and how to get your mask back on your face and how to clear your mask out, because it's full of water when you put it back on your face, and you got to know how to hold your head just right and angle the air just right so the air fills up your mask and you can see again. So all that kind of stuff has to happen pretty fast. And if you're freelancing, that can happen gradually. You don't have quite the panic of losing 20% of your revenue as you do when you lose 100% of your income. And so this is really an important aspect of that freelance security. And it's funny, over the 20 years that I've been freelancing, people always say, it was, gee, isn't that a little shaky? Aren't you worried about, your next job or your next client or whatever it might be? And what I learned very quickly is that it's very much more secure. When I worked for other companies, every time the shock wave of a possible layoff went through the organization or that kind of thing, a lot of people are taking time figuring that out. And as a freelancer that has a healthy business where you've got 3 to 6 clients that you're working with, you don't have to worry about that day when everything falls apart. I mean, yes, you might lose one client or something like that, but you also know how to go back in and replace that one client with another client or 2 or 3 or whatever you want to do. That's the other great thing. If you're doing this while you're still working, it lets you grow your business at a rate that makes sense to you. So it's not an either or. And I would say that most of the people that have gone through our program and done our freelancing or online research product or whatever it might be, are working full-time someplace else, and they need something they can use to ramp up with. They don't have the reserve to just drop one job and start doing another. That's always a big decision, no matter who you are, what the circumstances are, to leave a good paying job and go to something different than that. Again, a little like the air hose situation. When somebody jerks that air hose out of your mouth and turns off your air, you got to put things together pretty fast. But when you've got a couple air hoses going there, it's a whole lot easier. And so the next big thing that's happening, because we're right in this right now, is companies are starting to say, come back into the office. And what I'm hearing from a lot of the freelancers I talk to is that, I've got a good job but I'm not crazy about the idea of going back into the office. I've got too comfortable with not having a commute and being able to wear my loose-fitting pants and sneakers to every meeting rather than having to get dressed up in a suit. And if that's the kind of job you did, or even business casual is, just the idea of going someplace and being dressed up and maybe meeting clients or meeting other people in your company. A lot of energy goes into the commute, to getting dressed. A lot of people have 2 cars because, that's what they need to go to work. But I'm hearing a lot of people say, how do I ramp this up? How do I make this happen faster? Because my company has given me 3 months and said, you can work at home, or, you can come into the office, but in 3 months, we're going to have everybody back in the office, or we're going to have 80% of the people back in the office. And so that's coming. But just sort of a sidebar to that is, because I just wrote an article on this for International Living, is there are many big companies like Google and Salesforce and PayPal that are allowing their employees to work from home for the foreseeable future. So that's going to be a potentiality. In my world, working from home is a good thing, whether you're doing it for an employer or yourself, but you don't really get the freedom component to it until you are working as a freelancer for yourself. Because then the number one thing that comes up over and over again is people have the ability to control their own schedule, and they have the ability to set their own agenda. How many times have you been in a job and your boss came in and asked you to do something that you knew was a waste of time compared to the other things you have on your plate? And you because they're the boss, you have to do it. But there's better use of your time, and that's the game that all of us play or played, especially if you worked in corporate America. The job one is to keep the boss happy, and job two is work on the things that you think are most important. But job one can overtake job two in terms of priority order, and that's a very frustrating thing to do. So that's pretty much the material that I wanted to cover today. Just want you to think about these three big changes and some of the ways that you can take advantage of those. Of course, the LinkedIn thing, there's nothing official out about that as yet, but it's probably coming. Makes a lot of sense. And so that would be something to pay attention to. And the just people going back into the office, and obviously getting your vaccination, that really gives you a lot of protection. I know I weighed the pros and cons, and I travel around the world, and when you do that, when you stay in one place, you kind of get less different things challenging your immune system. But when you're traveling a lot, you're going to wind up being exposed to a lot of different things, and sort of in that environment. In fact, when I moved to Mexico 10 years ago, there was a certain set of inoculations that made sense to get, and I got those, and it served me well, and so but the good news is the numbers are that the majority of people are getting the inoculation, and the majority of people, because of that, are going to be going back to work and returning to a life that's more normal, because you don't need everybody to get the vaccination in order to things get better fast. So with that, thanks for dropping by today. Look forward to seeing our members in our Tuesday night call. Look forward seeing those of you that are watching this on playback in the chat window, and have a great Memorial Day weekend. Take care. Adios.